All right, my friends, we are going to be, with Hashem's help, tying up the loose ends of Chazarah tonight. So let us finish the Ramah on Sif Beis, and then go back to the Shulchan Aruch Harav. אנחנו עכשיו לומדים את הרמ"א, שזה לא שמה, אבל עוד מעט we'll start the Alter Rebbe here, and in the Alter Rebbe we're up to, anybody remember?
180s, I'm not sure what's that. 70, 50s. 190?
19 is where we're up to?
19?
Yeah, I think we're up to 19. 20. No, I think we're up to 20. Up to 20.
So when we finish, we go back to them? Okay.
Okay, so let us... I'm okay, thank you. Let's finish the Ramah first. Okay. V'yesh oimrim. No, I'm first finishing the Ramah. The Ramah, if you have the Mishnah Berurah or the big Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch, it's the actual Shulchan Aruch, 253.2, towards the end of the Ramah. First of all, if you take something out of the oven, you are not allowed to wrap it in blankets. Meaning to say, there's the concept of shehiyah, which is what we've been learning about until now, and there's the concept of hatmana. Shehiyah is to leave something on a heat source. Hatmana is to insulate something in something that maintains the heat. Now, we've been learning that you could change from one shehiyah to another shehiyah. You could take it from your blech to your plata, from your blech to somebody else's blech, plata to plata, you name it. As long as you... Oh, shkoyach.
That was like really last minute.
Excellent. As long as you... As long as you... As long as you keep all the conditions of Chazarah. However, the Ramah says, you cannot take it off the fire and put it into a hatmana situation. Because hatmana you can only do before Shabbos. You cannot start a hatmana on Shabbos. We're going to learn more about that later. The reason for that is because before people did hatmana, they would generally heat it up very hot. And therefore, in case you found that it's not so hot, you may forget and reheat it. So now, even though it's coming off the kira, so it's obviously hot, so you're just going to put it into a hatmana, big deal. No. The fact is, this is a shehiyah, and that's a hatmana. You're starting a new hatmana on Shabbos. That's not allowed. Yesh oimrim. The kol shu samach l'chashecha or samach l'borchu. Shu kabolas Shabbos l'didan. Musamach l'kashem l'san agdir yesh l'hartichim b'yom dinah kuma b'Shabbos atzmoi. Yesh mekilan razeh v'minag l'hakal achtev l'hachmer b'akom shein tzorach kol kach. Okay, my friends, here the Ramah brings in the opinion of Tosfos. Tosfos says, as we've mentioned in the past, that when the Gemara says that according to the opinion you can return even on Shabbos. What does it mean, even on Shabbos? That means, first of all, it's forbidden before Shabbos. But if you keep the conditions of Chazarah, you can do it. And not only that, but if you keep the conditions of Chazarah, you can do it on Shabbos too. But that means even before Shabbos, you must keep the conditions of Chazarah. What's the purpose of keeping the conditions of Chazarah before Shabbos? On Shabbos, you're allowed to cook. So the reason for the conditions of Chazarah is because if you don't keep it, it looks like you're doing a new shehiyah. Right? That's what we've been saying. Well, before Shabbos, you're allowed to do a new shehiyah. There's no problem with that. You're allowed to do whatever you want. You can smoke a pipe if you want. So what's the problem with appearing to do a new shehiyah? So they explain that it's a gzeira. if you could do Chazarah before Shabbos without the conditions, you might forget and do it on Shabbos without the conditions. Now, this is only a problem if it's close to Shabbos, because otherwise you'll say, well, maybe we should start keeping Shabbos on Tuesday, because you should get used to keeping Shabbos, otherwise you may forget and desecrate the Shabbos. Some people, they have those things that cover the lights, but they leave them up the whole weeks. Kind of cancels out the purpose of them. But my point is, you're supposed to, Shabbos is Shabbos, the weekday is the weekday. We can't make a decree during the weekday not to, do stuff because you may do it on Shabbos. So Tosfos qualifies his chumrah, and he says it only applies within a short amount of time before Shabbos. What is that short amount of time? The amount of time it takes for this food to heat up on this fire. So you're heating up, let's say you're doing Chazarah with the cholent. How long would it take to heat up this cholent on this fire? However long it would be, a half hour, whatever it is.
So you go backwards
Go backwards. From that time,
and then
from that time before Shabbos is when you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah. So if you're making a cholent, let's say, let's talk about a person who cooks their cholent on their stovetop, and then they put it into their oven. That's just, for example, I'm just giving you an example. So an oven is not grufa uktum, right? According to most opinions, even if it's covered inside, but that's just the way it's built. So it's not considered grufa uktum. So if you want to be able to put into that oven, that's called Chazarah, basically. Chazarah, because you're taking it from the fire on top, and you're putting it into the oven on the bottom. You want to be able to do that kind of Chazarah on Shabbos, on Erev Shabbos, excuse me. You're not keeping the conditions of Chazarah, because even if you keep it in your hand and it's still hot, fire is not covered. Understand? Fire is not covered inside there. So you would only be allowed to do it if you do it with the amount of time before Shabbos that this cholent could heat up in this oven. So let's say the oven is on, I don't know, however high it's on. How long would it take this food to heat up in this oven? However long that is, if you want to keep the opinion of Tosfos, you'll put it in before that time. Otherwise, you wouldn't be allowed to. Yes.
I'm cooking on my stove. It's boiling and it's ready, hot. Now, if I need to put it in my oven, I have to wait the same time cooking it.
You have to what?
I have to wait the same time cooking it. It's boiling. I'm just finished right now to boil it. It's cooked 100% to eat. I want to put it for Shabbat.
Beautiful.
So I have to wait on the same time.
Don't wait. Put it straight in.
Right?
Straight in.
So he's talking
The
about
point
is the chamin is cold.
No. No. Chamin is not cold. You want to put it in, and you want to fulfill the opinion of Tosfos that says that within a short amount of time before Shabbos, you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah. So to be able to keep that condition, you're going to have a problem because the oven is not a covered flame. In the oven before Shabbos, you're not keeping the condition of Chazarah to have a covered flame. So if you want to do that, you would have to figure out how long would it take this cholent to heat up in this oven. Not that it's cold now; it's still hot. But if it would be cold, how long would it take to heat up? Let's say an hour. Oh, so you have to put it in this oven 1 hour before Shabbos. If you want to worry about the opinion of Tosfos. If you don't, put it in right before Shabbos, that's fine. Of course, it has to be half cooked or according to Chachamim, fully cooked, whatever it is.
So Rabbi, if I cook it on Thursday, it's ready to eat. I put it in the refrigerator. On Friday, I put my stove for Shabbat. I have to wait the same time. It's cooked because it's already cooked. You can eat it cold.
That's an interesting question. Honestly, that's an interesting question. I was just wondering about that as I was teaching this, because this whole thing that Tosfos says is only when you're doing Chazarah. When you're doing Chazarah, so we have to make sure that you're going to keep the conditions before Shabbos to make sure you keep them on Shabbos. But if you're actually doing a new Shehiyah, and if you're actually cooking something, well, then we don't give you any conditions before Shabbos. Just like before Shabbos, you can tie, and you can select, and you can cook. I mean, you can do everything else. So why can't you do Shehiyah, which is basically cooking? So there's no rule about Shehiyah. There's only a rule about Chazarah. So if you're taking it off the fire and putting it on a different fire, that's Chazarah. If you're taking it out of the fridge, even though it was cooked already, I don't think that's Chazarah. I think that's like a new Shehiyah.
Yeah,
there you wouldn't have
I
to
think
keep these conditions,
but I think
even according to the
you kind of
Tosfos.
answered it with the Chazarah.
Now what?
Because that question, because if it's Shehiyah, you will know that you cannot start to cook
Exactly.
on Shabbos.
Exactly.
So why would you need the same thing? Chazarah, you know that there's permissible ways to take it off, so you have to be careful.
Exactly. Chazarah is what we have to protect. But Shehiyah, nobody's going to do Shehiyah on Shabbos. Chas v'shalom. So that's why, yeah, that's correct.
We studied about the Chazarah. If you take on Shabbat, it's hot, and it's rain, and you remind you to lachzir oto,
Yep.
it's okay, Rabbi.
I understand that. But now we're learning the opinion of Tosfos, who says that everything we learned about Chazarah, you have to do also before Shabbos. How long before Shabbos? The amount of time it would take to heat up this pot. During that time, according to Tosfos, you have to keep all the conditions we learned about.
That's a lot of time tracking sometimes, right?
Yes.
You could have 6, 7 things going with different time frames.
Yep. That's true. This is one of the reasons we mentioned, going back to the Shehiyah classes, this is one of the reasons we mentioned that it's a good thing to use a blech or a plata or some kind of situation of a covered fire always. Because that way you cover yourself according to Tosfos too.
How about if you had those 7 dishes, let's say, and you just took the longest time and just said, you know what, I'll just use that as my benchmark. Then you should be covered for everything, right? Instead of different
for sure.
calculations.
Yep, that's correct. Okay, the bottom line is that even though Tosfos says this, and the Rosh says it too, nevertheless, the minhag, the Ramah says, is to be mekel. It is good to be machmer if it's not so necessary. Okay, now Tosfos brings in another point. Sorry, the Ramah brings in another point. That all of this is v'dafkal gabi kir mamish. This is only on top of kir. Lismach eitzel afidu samach leish makom shesel especially afidu samach chashev. When it comes to putting something close to a fire, which is not a place you would normally cook, so the conditions of Chazarah do not apply, that you could do even close to dark. In terms of a oven, there is no difference between Chazarah into it or smicha next to it. It's interesting that Ramah is giving this opinion. We're going to see in the Alter Rebbe that not everybody holds of this opinion. We're going to get back to it. But the Ramah is saying that smicha next to a tanner is a problem because the heat of the tanner is so strong that even if you're doing smicha next to it, instead of putting something in it or on it, it's always considered like a shema yechata problem. It's still considered a shema yechata problem. Okay, this is all in a place that is Yatzei Ledes. If it's not Yatzei Ledes, it's no problem, like we will explain. All right. Let us go to the Alter Rebbe and continue where we were yesterday. What did I say, 20?
20.
Okay, so the Alter Rebbe actually starts 20 about lismach, which is what we just learned in the Ramah. The Ramah just said that smicha next to a tanner is a problem. So this is the topic the Alter Rebbe starts 20 with. אפילו סוג גפס ועץ ונגור וקוטן, שאין לך שלחיתו בסיים מחוץ לא יקבל שלסבור למים. אפילו כבר סילק תש הזה מהתנא מבועד יובן, יכול גם וקרקע ולהדעת להחזיר לתוכו ולאפילו לסיים חוי אסלוי, אפילו תש שיש מצאנו גם לשוי בעניין שאין בו משום בשל כגון שהוא יובש. הרי זה מותר לסמך לפשין הנראה כמש בשבס התחילה, שאין הלווה שחוץ לתנא והקירה והרדינה כסמך כנגד המדור שיסבור בסימן שין יוחס. We are going to see in Siman 3:18 that you are allowed to heat something near a fireplace on Shabbos. When I say near a fireplace, I mean not directly over the fire.
Soup, everything away.
No, not soup.
Dry. A modern day fireplace.
Modern day fireplace. Do they even have them nowadays?
Not in Florida.
Not in Florida, but wherever they do. Because, okay, you can't do it directly on top because Shema Yechata, because after all, you may stoke the flame. So you do it a little bit further away, not actually right next to it, just a little bit further away. Now, as long as there is no Isser of Bishul, how could there not be an Isser of Bishul? Based on what we said yesterday, Ein Bishul, Achar Bishul Beyavesh, right? Which means Schnitzel. Thank you. Anything fully cooked and dry. There is no bishul achar bishul. So the point is that there is no isser of bishul. What about the conditions of Chazarah? The whole point of Chazarah is that it shouldn't look like you're cooking. People don't cook opposite fireplaces. Now, if they do, that would be cooking on Shabbos. But here it's not actually cooking, nor does it look like cooking. So it's okay. That's what it says there. And the same thing, by the way, applies to cooking on top of a pot. It's not a normal place to cook. So you can heat something up there without the conditions of Chazarah as long as there is no actual Isser of Bishul. As long as there is no actual cooking, because it's fully cooked and dry. Here the Alter Rebbe is adding that smicha, that putting something close to an oven, those two cases. You don't need any of the conditions of Chazar. You need to make sure there is no bishul, but you don't need to do any of the conditions of Chazar.
How can you make sure there's no bishul?
If it's fully cooked and dry, or if it's moist, as long as it's still hot enough for Sfardim to be Yatzaledes, for Ashkenazim to feed to your guests. So that's how you make sure there's no actual bishul. But as far as the conditions of Chazar, no need. You could have put it down. You could have not intended to return it, or even to do smicha. You took it out and you thought you were finished. Later on, you decided, let's keep it a little warm, some guests. So you put it next to the oven. That's fine.
Fine. My hand, I can put very hot. My son, before he's reached the cold, it's hot for him.
Your son.
I can take my son to check.
Your son, take your son. Just make sure nobody's watching. You might get in trouble. But it goes. Kreise shel tinek nichvas ba. It says in the Gemara. It's the stomach of a child. It's sensitive skin, not the skin of an adult that's used to it. Yes.
You keep splinters in your hands.
Yes. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly what I'm saying. If it can't reach Yatsa lettuce boy, then there's no cooking there anyway, because it can't reach Yatsa lettuce boy. The point is, it could reach Yatsa lettuce boy. And if, you still can do it. If it could not reach Yatsa lettuce boy, I just want to explain. If it could not reach Yatsa lettuce boy, you could put something there that's cold too, even if it's liquid, even if it's not fully cooked. Because less Yatsa lettuce boy is not cooking on Shabbos. So here it could reach Yatsa lettuce boy, which is why you have to keep the conditions of bishul, right? Make sure there's no bishul, but not chazar, because it's not a normal way to cook.
Let's take your fireplace scenario.
Yep.
So you have a fire, it's burning, you put it away from the fire.
Yep.
It doesn't matter even at that point if the flames are even able to reach it, or should you keep it further away?
No, the point is further away means that it's not directly in front of the fire. It's a little bit further away.
Even by a fireplace, if you have like.
Well, you have those shields.
It goes in, you have a little shield.
Right, but
Putting something on the side, liquid, it's gonna warm it up.
no, but I'm saying, but if the actual flames, touch it, is that a problem? Not regularly, but if one flares up or something like that.
I mean, again, you're not doing any bishul here, and you're not doing anything that looks like bishul. The only thing is shema yechata, right? That there's an issue that if you put it too close, so it's like there's a fire here. How are you going to remember not to stoke it? You have to put it a little bit further away. Putting it a little bit further away is what reminds you. So how further away is that? I don't know. I never saw an exact measure.
I mean, is this something people do up north or something like that?
I've never seen it or heard of it. But what some people might do is they might use a radiator.
Yeah.
You might want to heat something on a radiator.
Directly.
Now again, if it's a radiator that you can control, there's a shema yechata issue. So you would want to put something like in between to remind you not to change the flame. You know what I mean? Not to change the setting of the radiator.
In New York,
But in terms of nirka mavashal, it's not nirka mavashal. It doesn't look like cooking.
in New York, they have one like this. It's like for the.
Yeah.
You put it on top. It's no control.
Space
no
heater?
Well, there's no control there, but there might be control in the other room. You know what I mean?
Shabbat.
The ridges.
I understand, but Shabbat. The whole point is to remember it's Shabbat. That's the point. That's why we're having all these rules, to remember.
That would also be a shinui, I guess, too. You're on a radiator?
It's a shinui from the normal way of cooking, but you have to have something that reminds you within this action not to change the temperature. You understand? Although, honestly, there is an opinion in the Rishonim, that's the Ramban, that says that you can put it directly over a fireplace, because the fact that you're cooking it or that you're reheating it in this unusual way, that itself will remind you not to stoke. But the other Rishonim disagree, the Rosh disagrees. It says it has to be a little bit farther away. So the same thing would apply to a radiator.
I have a question. You have up north cold, and you got the fire. Warring. We said we can put the pot over there.
Yeah, we just said.
Close, but not too close, but yeah.
I'm getting my question. You got warring, and I have a platter over there.
1 second, the pot is dry. It has to be dry.
Dry. So this one is getting warm, and the platter over there. So if it's getting warm, that's a little. Can I take this and put it in a platter?
Yeah, the rules don't apply.
It's already hot. I mean,
In terms of putting something on a plata, there are opinions that need conditions of chazar. That we never fully addressed yesterday. Maybe we'll address it.
Chazarah in mind.
Chazarah means you have to have it in your hands the whole time. You have to.
No, I cannot sleep in my mind like this.
So
it's
don't.
in my mind. I said.
No. Sleep in your mind is not enough. You have to have it in your hands.
So each time it's in my hand, it's okay. But the minute you let go, it's gone.
That's chazar. That's one of the conditions of chazar.
Okay.
Now, do you need that by a plata or not? That's a good question. So this is a little bit of a machlokes. We didn't discuss it yesterday. Let's discuss it right now. There are opinions that say that the conditions of chazar do not apply to a plata, to a hot plate. No, besides the Gorfa Kotam. Gorfa Kotam is not enough to not need the conditions of chazar. That is one of the conditions of chazar. One of the conditions of Chazarah is that the fire has to be covered. But in addition to that, you have to keep other ones by normal fire. The question is a plata considered a place that is normal to cook or not? That's the question. Meaning to say, if it's a normal place to cook, then it's good that it's Gor for Katan. It's considered Gor for Katan because there's no knob to change the temperature. But if it's a normal place to cook, well, you cannot put anything back there unless you keep all the conditions we learned about, keeping it in your hand, having it in mind, etc., etc. But there is an argument that can be made that people do not cook on their platas. They cook on their stovetops or in their ovens, and they simply use the plata to keep it warm. And therefore, there is a logic to say that it's not mechzik mavashal. Doesn't look like cooking. Doesn't look like a new shehiyah, which is what you would do. I mean, a new shehiyah, if you're actually cooking something the first time, you would do it on a oven, on a stove, in a normal way. So to say that you don't have to keep the conditions of Chazarah on a plata, just like what we've been discussing, to do smicha next to a kir, to put it on. Wow, I would not get. I don't understand. Plata is yasaledis boy. So if it's not completely cooked, you can't put. That's cooking. That's cooking on Shabbos. Sorry? I don't understand. You cannot put anything on Shabbos. Talking about Chazorah, yes. Yeah.
They said like it's not a way of cooking, but it's cooked. It's cooked. The plata can cook if you want to.
Absolutely, you can cook. A fireplace can also cook. And when you cook on top of a pot, you can also cook. And when you put it next to a kira, you can also cook. All the examples we just gave. But it's not a normal place to cook, is the point. So, yeah, you could cook on a plata. You could cook in a crock pot. You could cook in all these things. But I don't know about a crock pot. A crock pot, I think people do use to cook.
No, cook our chocolates.
Yeah, but even during the week. I mean, there are non-Jews who use crock pots. They didn't make them for Jews, I don't think. I mean,
And they use their own.
they use their own
They put it in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to have to deal with supper at night. Before they leave for work, they put it in a slow cooker. So, yeah, but a plata I don't think is used for cooking generally. So that's what we're talking about. A crock pot I don't think would this have to would apply.
Non-Jews wouldn't use a plata.
No,
They
as a
got-
warm. Yeah, as a warm. I don't think they use it to cook.
So you could put it anytime at
They wouldn't
any,
leave an urn on for 26 hours either.
This is what it is.
at any point in time, you could put the food on the platform.
If you hold that a plata is not a normal way to cook, that is correct. Then you could put on a plata anything that has no rules of bishul, that has no bishul issues. And he says as long as it's dry, or if it's liquid, if it's still hot, however you define hot, you could put it. Even if you had put it down, if you didn't have it in mind, it's okay.
Said by everyone.
No, there are other opinions. In particular, if you want to know the names of the opinions, Rabbi Vadia holds that a plata does not have mechzik mavashal. I believe that Rav Vosner also says the same thing.
It's not something considered cooking.
It doesn't look like cooking. It could cook, but it doesn't actually look like cooking. Let me see if I have the names here.
What's the classic psak, or is there one for Ashkenazim?
thought I wrote the names here, but I'm not seeing it. So I believe it is the Shmir Shabbos Kel Chasai of Oyarbach who says that a plata is not like the top of a pot. It's not like, it is still considered a normal place to cook. And the reason for that opinion is that they define cooking as the way, as the Shabbos definition of cooking. The Shabbos definition of cooking is not to take something raw and cook it. Cooking is to take something and make it yatzeletes boy, even if it's just a liquid. Making a yatzeletes boy is cooking by the Shabbos definition. So that's something that you would and do use the hot plate for all the time. You might have cooked the chicken soup Thursday night, and then before Shabbos you put it on the hot plate or the cholent or whatever it is. So that is a normal way to cook in the Shabbos definition of cook. It's not the way you would cook something to make it edible from raw, but you would do the malacha of bishul on that hot plate. So
And you wouldn't do that on top of a pot?
not normally. I mean, if there's no room, whatever, yeah. But I mean, normally, why would you put a pot on top of a pot?
Oh, meaning that it's not the derech, but it
It's not
could
the
be
derech.
done.
Could be done, of course.
Meaning,
Not the derech.
If you cook the soup on Thursday, on Friday it's cold in the soup, so you have to warm it up before you put it over there, or you can put it right away. Because it's bishul the soup.
You're putting it on Friday afternoon,
I cooked it on Thursday.
and then you're putting it
I
on.
need it for.
I understand. You're putting it on before Shabbos,
Yes.
so it
No
can
problem.
be cold. No problem.
Cold, no problem. Okay.
No problem at all.
Okay.
No problem at all.
So we're talking about food. It's only you start on Friday to cook it almost ready, and then you need to put this to stove for Shabbat. The same thing you warm the food on that point.
No problem.
Okay, you start to cook for Shabbat 2 hours, 1 hour, and it's almost cooked. Let's say more than 50%. Now you want to put it for the Shabbat. So the stove must be the same time you warm the food to put it in, or you can put it right away. Ask the person. Okay.
I don't understand.
Okay. I'm starting cooking.
Yeah.
And this food is for Shabbat.
Yep.
So it's not ready cooked,
But it's more than half cooked.
More than
Hananya
half
is happy.
and I'm gonna put it in the stove for Shabbat.
Yep.
So I have to put the stove on at the same time is warm the food, or just put it on and put it inside.
I don't understand. What are the options?
So
Put it on or not put it on? What do you mean? You have to put it
no,
on.
so what is the amtana at the same time with the, what's the reason for that? Where is that? Give me an example for that.
You're talking about the Tosfos, the opinion I just said?
Yes.
If you want to conform with the opinion of Tosfos, and you're cooking on Friday, and now you want to put what you cooked onto a different hot surface,
That's what.
so you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah. That means you take it from where it was cooked and you put it in the other place, whether it's from the stove to the oven to the stove, plata, whatever it is, you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah. I mean, a plata, if you hold that you need the conditions. The condition of Chazarah is you don't put it down, and you have in mind that you're gonna put it there. That's all.
Condition Chazarah, the plata or the stove for the Shabbat have to be warm, or it doesn't matter.
If it's not warm, how are you going to keep it hot? I don't understand.
No, I mean, I just put it on right now.
That's fine. So what's the
Ah,
problem?
it's okay. So what is the time? You said you must have the
How long do you have to keep these conditions for? Tosfos says, for the amount of time it would take to heat up this food.
and this plata should be got warm before that.
No, that during that time, if you want to put it on the plata, you have to keep the conditions of Chazar. Before that time, you can put it on without any conditions.
I still not get it because I have the food, and we're talking about the Chazarah, and we're talking about And the question for about 2 minutes ago, when you said you just take it and put it, it doesn't matter if it's hot or not hot. So where is the Chazarah? I don't get it. I have to understand that point, please.
If you're putting it close to Shabbos, according to Tosfos, you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah.
The condition of Chazarah is the stove to be warm.
No,
No.
is that the
There's nothing
heat
to do
on
with
the
the condition
stove,
for Chazarah.
the heat on the stove has to be covered. There's no condition of Chazarah that the stove has to be warm. If it's not warm, it's not Chazarah because it's not hot, then there's no,
So
there's no
the
problem.
condition of the Chazarah is the food to be cooked outside before you put it. That's
No.
the condition of the Chazarah.
No, that's also not a condition of Chazarah.
So what?
That's a condition of bishul.
A bishul. So where is
That's a
the
condition of
Chazarah? I
bishul.
don't
If
get
it's
it.
not
again.
fully cooked, it's a bishul problem. Conditions of Chazarah are that it has to be in your hand the whole time, and you have to have in mind that you're going to return it. You have to have that in mind, and it has to be a covered flame.
This is the time it's cooked and you take it outside and you go around. Hi, how are you? And all that. Then if the time
Those conditions you have to
now I
keep.
got it.
According to Tosfos, you have to keep those conditions within a short amount of time
Now
before
I
Shabbos.
got it. Thank you.
Question?
I have a question.
Yes. Oh, one second. I do want to answer what you're saying. What is the standard Ashkenazi procedure as far as a plata, if it's considered to be a some place you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah or not? I mean, honestly, Shlomo Zalman is like tops in terms of Hilchas Shabbos.
What about for you?
With all due respect to Rav Wosner, Rav Shlomo Zalman is like the tops. Last time I taught this to my group, I called Rabbi Heller from Crown Heights, and he completely dismissed the idea that it should be, that you should not have to keep the conditions of Chazarah. Said Bishul is the way we define it on Shabbos, and reheating is included in that, and you have to keep the conditions, and so on and so forth. Another point that Rav Fargash makes in his Sefer is that it's not so difficult to conform with both opinions, because if you take a upside down, pan, then everybody's happy, right? Because
Yeah, I mean, my plata is not so hot, so if you don't do it directly, it's not going to be.
then not everybody's happy. But if you could make everybody happy, you may as well. So that's what he suggests. He suggests to take a tray, one of those, whatever they're called, foil trays, turn it over, put it on top of that, because when you do that, that's like on top of a pot. On top of a pot, you for sure don't have to keep the conditions of Chazarah.
So you can take
That's
it
his
back in and
suggestion.
out all the time, no problem.
As long as it's fully cooked and dry, or if it's warm, if it's liquid, it has to be still warm.
So how do you say even a blech?
Yeah. Rabbi says it about a blech too. I didn't get to that. Rabbi Vadia says it even about a blech, that a blech is not a normal place to cook either. The blech, it creates like a different space. And you could also not keep the conditions of Chazar. But that it comes out from the Alter Rebbe that is not. The Alter Rebbe does not hold that. Alter Rebbe holds a blech because what's underneath is an old place to cook, and the blech is just a cover of it. Doesn't create a new space. Alter Rebbe writes about a pot like creating a new space, as opposed to if you put it in an empty pot, because that pot is like it's nullified to the oven. It doesn't become like a different thing. It's only a full pot or an empty pot on the top of it that creates a new space. So according to the Alter Rebbe, the blech would not be good, but according to Rabbi Yosef, it would be good. Actually, I forgot to mention that. That's correct. Question? Yes.
Last night, you mentioned 7 conditions for Chazarah.
Yeah.
Then we went back to 3 conditions.
You caught me.
Right.
All right. So let's get.
Minimum 3 or what?
No, let's get technical and let's get into it right now. If you happen to have printed out the handout that I sent out, or if you just have it on your computer, on page 2, towards the bottom, I wrote the conditions of Chazarah. All right. Now, let's examine them for a minute and let's discuss them. Fully cooked is actually a condition of bishul. I'm sorry?
Is it the two bishul and Chazarah?
I'm not hearing you properly. Is it what? Again, Yassib, I'm sorry.
Is it two bishul and 5 Chazarah?
Now I hear you. Is it 2 bishul and 5 chazarah? Yes, you could say that. You could say that. You could say that. So, but let's examine them right now. Fully cooked is definitely a bishul issue. Still hot. Still hot. Listen carefully. If it's liquid, the fact that it has to be hot is a bishul issue, right? Because if it cools down and you reheat it, it's cooking. If it's a solid, then it's a chazorah issue because it's already cooked. There is no bishul issue. Nevertheless, the Magen Avraham holds that if it's not hot, it looks like a new shehiyah. And the whole point of the condition of the chazorah is to make it look like a continuation, not like something new. Okay, covered flame is a condition of chazorah. Still in hands is a condition of chazorah. Intended to return is a condition of chazorah. Thank you. Still an original pot is a condition of chazorah, although not everybody holds that it's necessary. And not inside kira is also a condition of chazorah, although some say that it doesn't apply today because our ovens are not like their ovens. So yeah, technically there are 5 conditions of chazorah and 2 of bishul. But when I said 3, I just ignored the thing about not switching it from pot to pot, just because whatever, people don't normally do that. And I didn't address the issue of not putting into an oven because a lot of people hold that our ovens are not like inside their kiras, like we said yesterday.
So is it 5 now?
It's 5. 5 of the 7 are chazorah issues, and 2 of them are bishul issues. Although technically, the one about being hot could be either one or the other. If it's liquid, then it's a bishul issue. If it's solid, it's a chazorah issue. Which brings me actually to point out an interesting thing I found in Rav Farkash's Sefer today. So we discussed yesterday that according to the Marana Bet Yosef, a liquid that has cooled off to under Yad Seledes Boy is a bishul issue, right? It has to still be hot, Yad Seledes Boy, too hot to touch in order to be able to reheat it on Shabbos. The Ramah has a compromise. He says, no, it's enough for it to be hot enough to serve your guests. It doesn't have to be Yad Seledes Boy. So when it comes to Chazorah, you have these 2 opinions. Yeah, but it means Yad Seledes Boy. Concerning Shabbos, that's how we define Masachas. That's how we define it. Yeah.
Was much less than
I understand, but that's how we define it. Masachas means hot. It doesn't mean boiling. Because it doesn't mean that.
Oh, what's boiling? L'artiach. Like in Hagala.
Exactly. In Hagala, Reseach is not how it defines it.
What does it say?
You want the words?
No. Not if you're gonna have to look for it someday.
I am unfortunately going to have to look for it due to my lack of remembering.
Is that even the Hebrew word? Am I making a mistake like in the Hebrew word itself? מה זה להרתיח מים? Boil. Come to a boil. It's the boiling. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, they have to be boiling. I don't have voice, which are bubbles. All right. Nevertheless, I stand my ground. When it comes to the definition of Reseach concerning Hilchos Shabbos, it means hot.
That's what.
Yes, let us boy. We don't have a definition of Shabbos in terms of bishul, of boiling. There is no isser per se of bringing something to a boil on Shabbos. Meaning to say, if you have soup that is not boiling, that's Yatzalet boy, you want to move it over on the blech and get it boiling, that's not an issue.
No, I also thought that it was strange to use that word because very, very soon after you move something, are you going to be able to put it back still boiled?
Yeah, it doesn't mean it.
Boiling goes away in a few seconds.
It doesn't mean it. It means Yatzalet boy.
I believe it.
But it's been Cham, right? Cham זה רק חם, או שחם מאוד.
Oh, here it is in the Mishnah Berurah. אתה שומע? שומע? Yeah, listen up. On that word, calls man shira sachas, the Mishnah Berurah says, פרט זה אין אדם לכון אז כמו זה בסד, בהם הטעם עוד ליתר לא מזר, כי אם באופן זה, אבל בזה הטעם, דכיוון שנסתלק מרסי חוסוי, דהיינו שאין היצא let us boy, Yeshuv is a bishul. If it goes out from its resichos, which means that it's not yatz let us boy, that's how he's defining that it goes down from its resichos, then it's bishul. You understand? So that's how he defines it. Resichos is yatz let us boy. No, maybe by water it means boiling, and by other things it just means hot. That's my guess. I'm not 100% sure about it.
I forgot where we were. I had a question, but it could be after work. I don't know where we were. I have a question about a liquid or a solid.
What's defined as liquid or solid?
No, well, it's also a good question, but that's not what I was asking. I was asking more of why do we hold ein b'shalach or b'shal balach, yesh b'shalach or b'shal yesh b'shalach or b'shal balach, ein b'shalach or b'shal b'zeh.
So, I mean, it's really a shin yul ches issue. That's where the main discussion is. But in short, by liquids, heat is very important, much more than by solids. By solids, once it's hot, once it's cooked, it's cooked. Hot and cold is secondary. But by liquids, by a soup, by a hot tea, you know what I mean? By that sort of thing, even though if it's cooked, it's still different than if it's not cooked. But the heat of it is a very important aspect.
Yeah, I refrain from eating it because it's cold in the solid.
In the solid, usually
Cold
not.
chicken, it's still
Exactly.
cold soup. It's the last thing you want to touch.
Usually, unless you're really desperate. So
Dry on the outside or dry to be dry inside also?
dry on the outside. Dry on the outside. Yeah.
It's very moist on the inside.
No, you don't have to worry about the inside. No. We'll discuss it more in Shin Yuches. It's Hashem. Okay, so let us continue.
I have a question. Are you allowed to remove, not to bring something to the outside let us as a liquid, and then bring it back so that you avoid boiling it?
One more time.
If I put my pot onto a burner that's on Shabbos.
Before Shabbos? Before Shabbos or on Shabbos?
Let's just say I have a pot that's hot enough to boil. Let's just say
A pot that's hot enough to boil.
a pot that's hot
Oh, a
enough to boil.
plata, yeah.
Could I remove it when I see that it's getting too hot in temperature so that it cools down, but then bring it back on? I go back and forth.
If it's fully cooked, then you keep the conditions of Chazarah.
Liquid.
If you keep the conditions of Chazarah. You want to take it off, hold it in your hands, not put it down, and put it back afterwards. Yeah.
We said putting it down. You referred to the.
If you have intention, you're going to put it back. You can put it down.
No, not correct. You have to keep it in your hands. You can't.
Rabbi?
I put it in intention.
No, that's another condition. That's another condition. You have to have it in your hands and you have to have intention.
Rabbi, I have another question.
I mean, there are other opinions, but that's the main halacha.
So the Rav said that putting it down on the ground is not what the halacha said wouldn't be allowed because that's where you leave it, right? So we said nowadays, so putting it on the
Counter.
counter.
Yeah, the poskim say that the counter of today is the ground of those days.
So the ground.
How much more so?
No.
Yes.
Don't leave something on the ground.
Yeah, but it
You don't
doesn't.
leave things on the ground. No one leaves things on the ground. It's the most uncommon, unless you're on your couch, which is probably less.
The couch is exactly what the Gemara said. Like he said, the Gemara explicitly says the kisa.
Stop selling kisa, but I'm saying
Shem, Bakasha. Scan Arav.
Rabbi, I have a share.
So what about the,
I-
what about the ground?
I would say that even though the ground is not a normal place to put a pot, but it is a place where things get put down. You know what I mean? Things get put down on the ground. What do you mean? Put things down.
Put down on the ground. Who put things down?
You work in the kitchen, you put it on the ground.
I've never seen anyone put things on
I
the
think I
ground.
wash it.
So what's it, because they don't have space on the couch?
No, just because it's a place you put things. A seat is for sitting. A chair is for sitting. You know what I'm saying? That's not where you put stuff. You don't keep stuff there. But you keep plenty of stuff on the ground. I mean, you store things and here and there. I mean,
But not hot pot, don't do it.
okay, but I'm saying it's not in a place where it has to be moved out of there. Like it's just that you don't.
I thought the table is an example of like a sapsal or it's gonna be.
Not sure.
So what about table?
Not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. It seems that a table is more like a counter. The pot is on the table because you're serving. You know what I mean? You're eating from it. You're not. It's not that it doesn't belong there. The point of a chair is that it doesn't belong there. Pot does not belong on a chair.
Thank you.
I have a question about it. Now, when I have the pot from Shabbat and I take it out in my hand, allowed to give to the lady and she can pour and then put it back?
With
Is
the
also part of
conditions.
it?
That's all. That's what we're learning about.
Okay.
Okay. So let us continue. V'yeshoysim lismach etzel kira oitanor shalanu she'ena grufim v'ktomen v'usku begefes v'etzim afsha zadayta la'achzir le'samcha v'erev yonam shum zer shem yechata shalav she'le'inyan lismach shami ba'oy yom le'chashu l'chitim v'kol malkam le'inyan lismach v'shabbos echmir yoysim. Here we have the opinion that the Rambam quoted, which is that, if you remember, when we were learning the beginning of the simon, we said when you put something outside of an oven, even if the fire in the oven is not covered, but outside the oven is considered like putting it on a covered flame, because the oven wall itself acts as a cover over the flame. So you're for sure not going to stoke the flame. Nevertheless, Alter brings down an opinion which says that that's all fine and good for Erev Shabbos. But on Shabbos itself, that's not considered a good enough covering. And putting it near an oven with an open flame is forbidden. It's not that you need the conditions of Chazarah. In other words, it doesn't look like cooking because it's outside the oven. But in terms of it being an open flame, maybe it is considered an open flame. Because the wall, you didn't put the wall there. The wall's already there. You didn't do any action to cover the flame. And therefore, it's still considered an open flame.
You have to move the whole blacktop, push it aside, and space.
It's a kli shemalachta le'isser. If you need the space, yeah. There is
Why is it plugged in? It's plugged in.
I understand it's plugged. There is an interesting discussion about moving a lamp. You're allowed to move a lamp on Shabbos.
Depends which light bulb they have in it, no?
Sorry?
Depends what light
Oh.
bulb they have in it.
So the logic is it's a klisha mlachta le'isser. Why not? You needed space or whatever. But there's a concept. I don't remember where I saw it first. I saw it in one of the Muxas farm.
The wire, like a flame.
That a light bulb, an incandescent light bulb at least,
You use the LED,
is
no
like
problem.
is like an actual flame, and a flame has its own din of muktzah. A flame is highly muktzah.
What's it called?
I'm sorry.
What's the name?
Muktzah machmas atzmai. It's like a stone. It's not a keli. It's nothing. It has no status like earth. So that's hiding. So you can't move it for anything. So therefore, not to move a lamp. So, but I don't think a plata is like that. I don't think a plata is red hot coils. I don't think there's anything red hot in there. So I think it's just a cliche mata leser.
What kind of light bulb is red hot?
Incandescent light bulb has an actual. That's how it gives heat. It has a little filament, a little piece of metal. It's glowing. It's an actual glowing metal. That's why Rav Chaim Oizer used to make Havdalah on light bulbs, because he wanted to teach the Olam that this is actual fire. He wanted to say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, but he wanted to say Hashem's name, calling it Eish, to emphasize that people shouldn't take it lightly.
What's an incandescent light bulb about? Regular old light bulb or the new one?
All light bulb, all light bulb.
The tungsten wire, like it's hot to touch, you know, you.
She wants it on the shear.
hot inside.
Exactly. It's red hot. A red hot metal is halachically like a fire, because it gives light and heat.
Yeah, the filament.
Thing turns red?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's where the light comes from?
exactly. That's what Thomas Edison discovered more than a century ago.
And halacha l'maaseh we can also do in Mariah Hashem?
I think so. I think so. Although I did see in the Yalkut Yosef that he questions it because of the glass, that maybe the glass is like a interruption. So I don't remember what his
I remember it
final
sounds
thing is.
good, but
If he says not, I think it's because of the glass. I don't think it's that he doesn't consider it a fire. I think it's accepted that it's a fire. But the glass maybe causes that it's not like you're seeing it directly. I think that's what he says. I'm sorry? Klisha malachta le'eser. You can move it if it's in the way. Okay. V'aminik is for Rishona. The minhag is like the first opinion. If it's not so necessary, it's better to follow that opinion. We don't really have this issue nowadays. I don't think there's any place near an oven that is close enough that it's going to be Yad Lettuce boy on Shabbos. We don't have ovens that work that way. So we're not going to dwell on that. Let's continue with 21. היינו שם התפשל זה שמחזר יצורנו היוכל לסחם ושם כל כך עד שיעץ לרס בו. אבל מני יעץ לרס שם לדבר הקומר לסמך שם, אפילו בתנור שבימיהם אף פי שנגור פרקות. אפילו לגבי הכיר הגוף או הכתובה מותר להחזר מני יעץ לרס שם, אף פי שכבר סיל תפשל זה מבוד יום, אנחנו לגבי קרקע ולעבדת להסתיר כלל, ולפנור לדבר אחרס, ואפילו, you had Alter over there, yeah?
Yeah.
ואפילו הוטב שיוש נסן לגמרי, ואפילו יש במוק לפי שכשאין שם חום כל כך, שיעץ לרס בו, אין גם משהו שם לכתחילה.
What's the difference between the tunnel of the Alter Rebbe and the Gemara one? Said the Moshe Beinehem and the Talmud.
The Tanur Shebimeim was wide at the bottom, narrow on top, and the opening was on top. So there was no opening on the side. Tashalon of the Alter Rebbe had an opening on the side. So even though it was coals, it was also coals, but it opened on the side, so the heat got out, and it wasn't as hot as the Tanur of the time of the Gemara.
So it's different halacha.
So the rules of Gar for Katam are different. The Tanur of the time of the Gemara, there was no way you could make the heat covered, because it was so hot, so it always was considered an uncovered heat. But the Tanur at the time of the Alter Rebbe, if you covered the heat, it was considered good enough.
Were you adding more wood to it?
I'm sorry?
Were you adding more wood to the tunnel?
No, they wouldn't. I mean, might add wood, but the concern is not that they would add wood. The concern is she'ichata, that you'll turn it over from the top with a stick or whatever.
But it's hot on it, it cannot be mechat.
Yeah, but you're taking the pot off. That's the whole issue. You're taking the pot off. You're serving it. You want to put it back. You look in. You see. Maybe I'll stir it up a little bit before I put it back. Oh, you mean if it's shehiyah? Shehiyah? Yeah. Also, maybe on the side. Maybe this room on the side. Sorry.
You have pot on it, it's like wood, right?
Well, the pot was probably not sitting on the gecholim. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
So you don't have access to the gecholim, basically.
No, but there was room. There was room. There was some room. I don't know. I don't know how big it was, but there was some room. Okay, so the point is that if the place
So
that
that's
you're
not the Rebbe time. This is the Gemara. Or this pictures that it's open on the side. It's only the time after the Rebbe is
open on the side is the Alter Rebbe's times, yeah.
And that's the Rebbe, not the Gemara.
It would have had to have an opening in this front.
Sorry?
Would have had to have an opening.
Why?
How is the fire gonna get air? Covered flame goes up.
No, it was open on the top.
But that's where you put the pots.
No, you put the pot in it.
Put the pot in it.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense either.
Why not?
How big is this thing?
Big enough to have a pot in it.
So you're building a little house with a fire inside of it.
A fire and a pot. How do you get in and out? You know, you have to have some kind of system.
You know what's open on the top?
I mean, I've seen the ones where it goes up and you put the fire at the bottom, but they make bread with that. And they actually put the bread on the side.
On the side, yeah. They used to do that, by the way.
Yeah.
They used to stick the bread on the sides.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's what it-
Top one.
Yeah, the Gemara says.
You said that if you cover
That's the way it's the base, yeah. And then,
You said that
that's the way it's covered. Right?
I
That's the side.
think this picture was the fire needs to still considered two pots. I've seen them, but they still use them as a little opening. Because then you fire wood in, and then you fire up to the sun on top. It looks like this. So it has like a little spot.
Okay. So what we are left with over here is that the Alter Rebbe says if you're putting something on a place that is not Yad Tzed Let Us Boy, you don't have to keep any of the conditions of Chazarah because it's not a normal way to cook.
Should be liquid also, or just selfish?
Read liquid also. However, he does say, when it comes to putting inside an oven, there is no difference between Yad Tzededus and not. This is a chiddush that the Alter Rebbe says. You cannot put something inside an oven.
It's gonna reach Yad Tzededus.
No. Even if it's not going to reach Yad Tzededus. I'll give you a very practical example. Very practical example. You've already turned the oven off. Oven's off, but you want to put the challah in just to defrost it a little bit.
As the oven's cooling off.
As the oven's cooling off, you can't do it on Shabbos, according to the Alter Rebbe. Even if it's less than that, Yad boy.
That was like the brownie thing or whatever.
you have to burn it or something, right?
Right, well, there was before Shabbos, but yeah. It's a very big chiddush. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't hold of it. The Mishnah Berurah says if it's not Yad boy, it doesn't look like cooking. It's not Yad boy. The Alter Rebbe holds no. Inside an oven has that feature of it looking like cooking no matter what.
Whether it is or
Now,
not.
if it's cold, that's not anything. That's that's storage basically. That's not looking like cooking. But if it's warm, even though it's not Yad boy, it still has that stigma of it looking like cooking. So that's a significant chiddush that Chabad passes like the Alter Rebbe. Most of the Ashkenazim generally would pass like the Mishnah Berurah. I'm sorry.
What about a Shabbos mode? That means even if this
Shabbos modes are still Yad Tzededus boy. I mean, they're still hot. They just, I think they
Shabbos mode, it's on.
just.
The whole point is here it's off.
You can't use. You don't use nothing on Shabbos mode, right?
No. The chiddush that I'm saying here doesn't apply to a normal Shabbos situation. Normally, you want your oven or whatever it is you're heating with to be Yatzalet Boy. You want it to be hot, right? Here, the Alter is saying if it's less than Yatzalet Boy, so it's not a Shabbos mode situation. It's one where you turn the oven off, and it's already cooled down to the extent that it's not even hot. You just want to put something in there to just warm it a little bit.
What's the difference?
That's not allowed.
It's not technically
In terms of
cooking. It's not technically cooking, but because it looks like cooking, it is
Exactly.
cooking.
What's the difference?
It is not cooking, but it looks like cooking.
So we treat it like cooking.
So it's
That's what I'm
forbidden. But they're about
The difference is not to put something in ovens that turned off. It's not cooking. Nobody cooking.
No. It looks like cooking. It's not cooking. It looks like cooking.
So how do we have a Shabbos mode on our oven?
The Shabbos mode accomplishes only one thing, to the best of my knowledge. To the best of my knowledge, the Shabbos mode accomplishes, it accomplishes, somebody pointed out that it doesn't, the oven doesn't switch off after 12 hours. Some of them have a safety feature. So that doesn't do that. But also, as far as I understand, it regulates the on and off cycle of the oven to be something that is not based on the thermometer, but is based on a fixed time. That it, let's say, turns on for 10 minutes, and then it turns off for 10 minutes. On, off, instead of being affected by the temperature of the oven, which would mean that you wouldn't be allowed to open the oven unless it's already on. That's the accomplishment of the Shabbos mode. As far as I know.
I don't know. Never used it.
As far as I know.
Might have been on.
Okay. Let us continue, because we have to learn the opinion of Tosfos as the Alter Rebbe says it right now in 22. All of this is to return it on Shabbos itself. But if you took it off when it was still day, and you change your mind, and you want to return it near dark, before Kabbalah Shabbos, even though if you want to do any kind of Chazarah before Shabbos, according to the first opinion, there is no problem. You don't have to keep it in your hands. You don't have that in mind. You don't have to keep it in the first pot. You can put it inside an oven. You can put it inside the oven of those days with uncovered coals, as long as it's half cooked. No problem. No conditions. That's the main halach. However, some say, this is the Tosfos. If it's so close to dark that if you would put this pot when it was cold inside, it would not have time enough to become hot while it was daytime. And by the way, when it says hot, it doesn't mean to cook, to make it fully cooked. It means to heat it up, to bring it to the point of Yatzalet Boy. Also, during that time, however long that time is, it's forbidden to put it back into this kira, nor to a different kira. Even though now it is hot. Unless you're following the rules that would allow you to return on Shabbos itself. Mishum, what's the reason for this? Because you may come to do it on Shabbos itself. But if you had enough time to heat it up while it was still day, but you don't have time to heat it up before Kabbalah Shabbos, then there's no problem. Okay, listen here. This is different than the Ramah. Alter was basing this on the Magen Avram, which is based, I think, on the Hagoy Sashri, one of the lesser-known Rishonim. But listen to this Chiddush here. And this might allow us to pat ourselves in the back and say, we are keeping Tosfos' Chumrah too. Here's what it is. The Magen Avram paskins, like the Rishonim who hold, that this Chumrah of Tosfos only applies in the amount of time that it takes to heat it from when Shabbos actually comes in, from when the sun sets, not from when you accept Shabbos. The way the Rambam quoted it is that in the time from when you accept Shabbos, it has to be able to come from cold to hot. From that time back. You can say, you accept Shabbos, let's say you go to an early minyan, you accept Shabbos 6:30. Right? Nowadays, does that make sense? Probably more like 6:45. Whatever. You accept Shabbos at 6:45. So according to Tosfos, if this food takes a half hour to heat up, to Yatzah lettuce, probably doesn't take a half hour to 15 minutes. So from 6:30 to 6:45, you have to keep these conditions of Chazar. That's the way the Ramah quotes Tosfos. The way the Alter Rebbe quotes him, based on the Magen Avraham, is no. The sun actually sets whatever time it sets, almost 8 o'clock these days. So if it takes 15 minutes to heat up, for those 15 minutes, you have to keep the conditions of Chazar, and that's it. So if you're going to shul at a normal hour to daven mincha, you're not staying in the house, till the very last minute. You're anyway going to be doing any kind of chazorah in the kitchen, and your wife is lighting, 18 minutes before. So it's basically you're not going to be doing chazorah during this, time span. So you'll be saved from transgressing Tosfos' opinion.
Can you say that difference again, please?
I didn't even notice that you were online.
Yeah.
All right.
What was the Ramah's opinion?
The Ramah says that the Chumrah of Tosfos applies for the amount of time that it takes to heat this pot before you accept Shabbos. The Magen Avraham says, and the Alter Rebbe passes like that it's that amount of time before the actual Shabbos comes in, like the sunset Shabbos.
So if you accept Shabbos at Baruch Hu, then you're probably in shul during those 15 minutes anyway, according to the Ramah as well, right?
Exactly. So according to the Ramah, that's true. That's true. That's probably true too. Yeah. If you're accepting Shabbos at Baruch Hu and you're going to shul for mincha, and however you're getting there, by the time you get there and have a mincha and go through the L'chon Ranana and get to Baruch Hu, yeah, you'll also be fulfilling it. That's true. That's absolutely true. All right.
I don't understand this at all. You just can't move something for 15 minutes. That's it. I know a person's accepted Shabbos. I don't understand. So after the 15 minutes, you can start doing this. Start moving things around, even though Shabbos technically doesn't come in.
No.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
No. Not at all. I'm talking about the 15 minutes before you accept Shabbos. I'm talking about keeping the conditions of Chazarah at a time that is not yet Shabbos. That's what I'm talking about.
So dusk. When it's not daylight, but it's not dark.
No. Once the sun sets, it's already Shabbos. Tosfos says that even before Shabbos, there's an amount of time where we make a decree and we say you have to follow the conditions of Chazarah, of holding things in your hands or whatever. Now, there's an argument what Tosfos means. Tosfos says it's the amount of time that it takes to heat this pot. So the question is he tacking on that time to when the sun sets, or is he tacking it on to when you accept Shabbos? That's the question. Now, if you accept Shabbos early, obviously you have to keep any conditions of Chazarah because it's already Shabbos for you. That's not a question. So according to the Alter Rebbe,
so shouldn't it be based on someone's intention that they should know what 15 minutes before they really want to bring in Shabbos is?
That's what the Ramah says.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's what the Ramah says. The way the Magen Avraham holds is no, they only tack it on to the last 15 minutes. Because the whole thing is a chumrah, the whole thing is a strictness to start keeping Shabbos rules before Shabbos. So they're not going to be so strict as to add it to your personal Shabbos. They'll add it to the general Shabbos. The whole thing is a chumrah.
It's numbers that you make. It's
I totally made it up randomly.
So it's the same, it should be the amount of time, the same
Each
type of
individual
food.
pot, each individual pot has its own time. It's not 15 minutes.
Rabbi, if
Yes.
you said 15 minutes before Shabbat, you can take.
It's not 15 minutes. It's the,
No.
it's the
You
time.
take a new,
of that
you
pot.
take the Shabbat 15 minutes before, 20 minutes before, half an hour before. And then after 5-10 minutes, you can change it or no? It's done.
No, once you accept Shabbos,
It's Shabbat.
it's too late. I wonder if you can do a Hataras Nadarim.
Because you got the fire and the stove or something like that.
That's an interesting question.
I can do that.
Can you do a Hataras Nadarim
You
on
got
accepting
three
Shabbos?
Rabbanim in the house. You can do
I
that.
mean, if you want to change your,
You want to take back, you accepted Shabbos, but
Yeah.
then you remember that you still got to take care of a few things. You got some stock options to, change up a little bit. You just got a good tip or something. Can you
Hatarat Nedarim?
I
Can you do
think
Hataras
once
Nadarim
you've
on
already
Shabbos?
taken it in, then you should be able to.
That's a good question.
I
don't
saw
know.
that being asked.
Yeah.
I see that being asked.
And
I forgot the answer.
interesting question. I don't know.
Not
Something to
once you
think
took
about.
it in on an actual Shabbos. If your practice is to take it in early, then you can probably change it.
No, I'm talking when you actually took
You
it in.
actually took it in and like.
Took it in. Well, not if you said Kiddush. If you said Kiddush, if you said Kiddush, you already said Hashem's name. You can't make it a bracha l'batal.
You gotta find.
But let's say you took it in without saying it. You said Baruch Hu.
You gotta find 3 guys. No?
Maybe. Anyway, just something to think about. All right. The Haminhag. Ooh, here's an amazing chiddush of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Listen here, my friends. He comes up with a very nice chiddush to save us once again from transgressing Tosfos' opinion. He says, you want to keep Tosfos' rules, but you didn't. You're stuck. You already put the pot down. You cooked the challah on point A. You want to move it over to point B. And it's a few minutes before Shabbos.
Point B is also hot?
Yeah, of course. Your chicken soup, your challah. I mean, of course it's hot. But the point is that you forgot, you put it down. According to Tosfos, you put it down, that's it. You can't put it back. It's within these minutes.
But before Shabbat, it's clear. Before Shabbat, you can do everything.
That's what most opinions say. And that's the halacha. But Tosfos says that for a few minutes before Shabbos, as long as it takes to heat this pot, whatever the pot is, you have to keep.
You say it's already was hot, and you take it out.
I understand, but if it were cold, how long would it take to heat? Whatever that time is. During that time, Tosfos says you have to keep the conditions, because that will remind you to keep it on Shabbos. If you keep it before Shabbos, you remember to keep it on Shabbos. So
Yeah, I
now
found it.
you
I found it.
yeah. What does he say?
If it's necessary to do malacha and it's still early in the day before, some say that they may perform Hatarat Nedarim
Who says?
to accept Shabbat before 3 people, while others hold that it's not effective.
Who?
I'm gonna check.
Rabbi, the Tosfot said about.
One second.
I know.
One thing at a time.
It's stupid.
One thing at a time. I want to finish.
Until it's finished.
Okay. One second. We'll get back to you.
Okay.
My point is that Rav Shlomo Zalman says you want to fulfill the opinion of Tosfos, but lo and behold, you put the pot down. According to Tosfos, that's it. You're stuck. Nothing to do. Cold chicken soup. Rav Shlomo Zalman says, here's what you do. Turn the fire where you want to put it onto to the highest temperature in such a way that it would be able to heat it up before Shabbos. Now, you're not going to leave it on that fire. You want it to be on a low flame so it won't boil out, so you'll have just warm soup. But at the moment that you put it down, you turn the fire very high. So at that moment, that fire could heat up this soup, even if it were cold before Shabbos. It could do it in 5 minutes. Oh, so when I actually put it down, I don't have to keep the conditions of Chazarah, because at this moment, this fire could heat it up. Now that I put it down, okay, I can adjust the flame. Why not? There's no rule against adjusting flames before Shabbos. Conditions of Chazarah, yes. Adjusting flames, no.
Okay, I found, you want the source?
Yes, I do want the source.
Taz and Levush hold that one can do the Tar Nadarim to annul. Magen Avraham, Aruch HaShulchan, Mishnah Berurah hold that it will not be effective.
Nice. Shkoyach.
You said there's no problem to adjust the flame. Like you said, at the beginning, if you put the black, you put everything on, and then just before Shabbos you want to adjust the temperature, you have a whole issue with this.
No, the issue is that the blech is nullified. The blech is nullified. But who said you need a blech? The child is already cooked. The soup is already cooked. You don't really need a blech.
Just the example, it's not cooked yet, it's cold.
It's cooked. It's just cold. You cooked it Thursday night. You put it in the fridge. Took it out, and you're heating it up. I mean, anyway, I didn't say it's cold. I said it's.
So if you just before you adjust the temperature, for the black, like you're showing that you need the fire. You're not showing that you don't need it. By covering it, you're showing that you don't need the fire.
Exactly, and then
so
if
you're after you're putting it in, and then you just playing with the flame.
Okay, first of all, I have two answers for you. First of all, it could be a case that you don't need a blech, like I said. And if you don't need a blech, so what if you nullify the blech? You don't need a blech. It's already half cooked or fully cooked. Second of all, I'll give you another answer. No, you can't pick it up and put it back down again. That'll ruin it. Yeah, that's it. We're talking about a case where you don't need a blech. It's already half cooked.
I just put that on the smicha WhatsApp.
Shkoyach. My phone is going mad somewhere. Yeah. Go ahead. Did I leave my phone in the car? Wow, something new.
This is the story what the woman tells the husband before going to the synagogue. Hey, check if it's this one. This is the 50 minutes. If you cannot do that.
That's what he's saying. No, that nullifies the blech. So you have to choose your chumrah. You have to choose your chumrah, basically. If you want a blech, don't change the flame. One second. You're making it lower. You're not making it higher. Odpam. I cooked the chicken soup on this burner. I have the blech on this side, okay? And I want to put it from one to the other. So you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah even before Shabbos, according to Tosfos. I didn't. Meanwhile, I put it down on the counter. I forgot. It's on the counter. According to Tosfos, I can't put it back here.
So you cool down this house a little.
No. Who said? What? Lama? No.
Still hot?
Still hot, let's say.
Okay.
So Shem Zalman says, the blech is here. Before you put the thing down, turn the fire up very high. Now, for argument's sake, pick up the blech and put it back down. Now it's a good blech, because I put it down after the fire was high. Then I put the pot down, and because with that hot heat, with that hot fire, it could boil in 5 minutes, so therefore I didn't have to keep the conditions of Chazarah according to Tosfos. And now I can make the flame lower. For some Zalman, that chiddush was only to make it higher. You can't make it higher after it's covered. You can make it lower. You understand?
But by making lower, it's not going to get boil in the same amount of time now.
Exactly. So, but as long as when you put it there, it could have boiled, so you don't have to keep the conditions of Chazarah. Now that it's there, it doesn't have to actually boil.
But this is two different things, because what you say now is
it's a chiddush. It's a chiddush.
You just to put the fire down. But before you say it need to be cold, if it was cold, and in the time it's supposed to be hot, this is what you need to wait.
No, that's not what you need to wait. This is the time that you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah according to Tosfos. During that time, you have to keep those conditions of keeping it in your hands or whatever.
What you say now, the last example that you give, it was from hot, just to put the flame down, one area, one subject. And before it was something else completely.
No, it's the same. It's the same. I said before that during the time, right before Shabbos, that it would take to heat this thing if it were cold. I'm not saying it is cold. I'm saying if it were cold, how long would it take to heat this pot? However long it would take. During those minutes, according to Tosfos, you can only put it back on a fire if you keep the conditions that you have to keep on Shabbos. If it's in your hands, and if you meant to put it back, and the fire is covered. Right? So you have to keep those conditions during that amount of time before Shabbos. So all I said now is that amount of time is measured by how long it would take this fire to heat this pot if it were cold.
So the idea is how long it's taking to eat it, to get to the level it's okay. But in the other case, the last case you did, it was already hot.
Yeah.
And then you put the fire down.
Exactly, because Tosfos is not saying that it is cold and you're making it hot. He's saying in the amount of time that it would take to heat it if it were cold. That amount of time is considered so close to Shabbos that you have to keep these conditions. He's not saying that it is cold. Maybe it's cold, maybe it's not cold, whatever it is.
So in this condition, for some woman, she is every Friday she's putting the eye, and this is nothing, not for her.
If you want to keep Tosfos, just organize your plata or your blech in advance. Don't do it at the last minute. That's all.
That's the best.
Keep it simple. Don't change fires and back and forth. Keep it simple. Okay.
By the way, Rabbi, just on a hot oven that is closed, you're allowed to take stuff in and out.
According to if it's Yatsa, let us buy, definitely not. You know what? I'm not sure about that.
It's off already.
Is the
The
door
oven
open
for
or
Shabbos,
closed?
but it's still hot.
What you
I
said.
know, but it's still hot.
If it's Yatsa, let us buy, then it depends what you hold about an oven, about a nowadays oven. Is it like the inside of a kira or not? We discussed this yesterday. One of the conditions of Chazarah, one of the 7 conditions of Chazarah, is that you cannot put something inside a kira. And the reason for that is that a kira was considered a more powerful way of cooking. One second. And therefore, if you put it in a kira, it looks like cooking. Now, if you say that our ovens are like inside a kira, if you say that, which some say, then even if there's no fire in it, as long as it's Yatzeletas boy, you can't put in an oven. I'll tell you why. Because inside an oven that is Yatzeletas, that's off, is the same as a kira grufa of those days. What do they do with a kira grufa? That's what we were discussing yesterday with your case. They took the coals out. They took out the heat source. So turning off the oven is the same as taking out the coals. Nevertheless, in those days, you could not put into a kira, even if it was grufa, on Shabbos. That was one of the conditions of Chazarah. You can't put into a kira.
Why?
Because the kira was where they cooked in a very, the real cooking was done in the kira. One second. They would put stuff on top of it, just, like if they needed to, or maybe to keep it hot, but the real cooking was inside. So therefore they said, you know what, even if you keep all the other conditions, if you put it inside, it looks too much like cooking, you can't do it. If you say that our ovens are like inside a kira, then even if it's turned off, as long as it's Yatzeletas, but you can't put it in. On the other hand, if you say that our kiras are not that our ovens are not like a kira, because like we said yesterday, many poskim say that our ovens are not like that, because though there you could cook on top of the kira or inside the kira, and you're choosing to cook inside, that's why it looked more like cooking. But over here, the 2 utensils of the stove on the top and the oven inside, the 2 totally different things. One is not the inside and the outside of the other. I don't know. I'll tell you, because Lamaisa, our ovens are not grufa and ketuma, according to most poskim. They're not considered covered. So it really doesn't make a difference in most cases, because usually when the oven is on, you can't put it back anyway, because it's an uncovered flame. You're asking in a case where it's off, so you have a grufa ketuma. So now it depends on this question of if an inside of an oven is like the inside of a kira or not. It's a machloikis. It seems to me that most poskim hold that it's not like a kira of those days, and that you would be allowed to put it in that situation.
Even if at that time it's going to be more answer
If you keep the other conditions of Chazarah. You have to have the other conditions of Chazarah. Yeah, so it would seem. And Farkash seems to side with those opinions. Let me just make sure I'm not getting that wrong. Where's Lema? Yeah, Fokker seems to say that most places can hold that it's not like those, not like inside a Kira, correct? So it seems.
But the Alter Rebbe says you can never put it in an oven, even if it's cold.
What about
It says even the ovens of our present age, right?
That's without the conditions of Chazarah. There he's talking without the conditions of Chazarah. What we just said, you don't know what we just said? He's talking without the conditions of Chazarah. Let me just make sure I got that right. Which means that what? He says in note 114, here in the online version, it is forbidden to return food to the inner space of a range or oven under all circumstances, even if the coals were removed or covered, and even if the temperature is not so hot that a hand would recoil from its touch. That's correct. Alter was not just saying without the condition of Chazar. He's saying there's no way you can put inside an oven, even if it is not yet lettuce boy. But that's all because inside those ovens was the better way to cook of the two options. With the option of cooking on the top of it or inside of it. Inside was the more powerful way to cook, so putting it in looked like cooking. But nowadays the argument is made that the oven is one utensil, the stovetop is another utensil. They're not inside and outside of the same thing, and we just use them to cook different things. So therefore, there's no special rule about inside being worse than outside. Again, some disagree. You know what? I'll tell you their other opinion right now, just for the sake of our knowledge. The question is, what is the reason why the inside of an oven is stricter than the outside, than the top of? Some say that it's because the main way of cooking was inside. That's where it was properly hot. That was the main way. No, those days. And on top, you only cooked, when there was no space inside or you just needed to keep it hot. So therefore, putting it inside was the main way. And therefore, they said, listen, the main way of cooking, we're not letting you do Chazarah to that way at all, because that's too serious, and all the conditions not going to help. It still looks like cooking. Only on the top, where it's not the main way to cook, that's where we'll let it. Well, if that's the case, the oven is not the main way of cooking nowadays. On the contrary, most people use the stovetop more than the oven. So therefore, according to that reasoning, the oven would not be more strict. But there is another reasoning, and that is simply that the oven is hotter than the stovetop, which is still the fact. Of course, it depends on the temperature. But I'm saying that environment of the oven is a hotter environment because the heat comes from all sides. So therefore, there is reason to say that if that's the reason, that the inside is more strict because it's hotter. So that you could still argue today, that the oven is a hotter environment than the stovetop, and therefore it looks like more of a serious kind of cooking. And according to that reasoning, there is room to say that the inside of an oven even today is forbidden under all circumstances. So, and some people do hold that. So according to them, it wouldn't be.
In the UK,
Yes.
in the UK, it's to have an oven with a stovetop on top. Almost every house, there are some that are different, but almost every house has a completely and utterly separate gas stovetop and electric oven.
Separate physically, or I'm saying they're not one on top of the other.
And one on top of the other, they're different pieces of equipment.
Right. Yeah, most modern kitchens in America also do. If you buy a stove, they come together. But if you build it into your kitchen, then they build it. They don't build it together. That's true.
Yeah, and the majority of houses in the UK nowadays seem to have, we call them cookers, ovens, and hobs. A cooker has an oven with a stovetop on top, and the oven is separate and the hob is separate. And none of the houses that I've seen recently have had a cooker.
Right. Okay. Very good.
What difference does that make?
What's a cooker?
No, that just emphasizes that our ovens are different than the inside of the ovens of those days because they're totally separate
They used
things.
to have the top and the inside.
Exactly.
Nowadays, the bottom is.
They're
top,
totally
the top is
separate.
top.
Exactly. Even if it's the same physical piece, but they operate separately, and certainly in
Well, they
kitchens.
do. No, even when they're together, they have to.
Exactly, but certainly in kitchens where they're totally separate. When you have one here and one there.
No, so they dated a hippie chick. Her family had an old range in the house, and so you put wood in the bottom, and then you take off metal pieces to put pans on, and the bottom is essentially like an oven. You push the logs to the back and you put pots in there.
It's exciting. We should bring that in here to
Yeah.
experience it.
Yeah, potbelly stove.
But you like actually take off
Like
the burner.
they, like until the 50s, they were still putting them in houses out west. Like I've been to a lot of houses out west. They're old that they all have them, and it has a big smoker that goes to the outside of the house, so you don't
Interesting.
fill the house with smoke, and it's all one unit.
Interesting. So that there would apply.
Yeah.
There would apply. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing's you can't even touch it. You have to use metal rods.
Wow.
The whole thing's cast iron.
Wow.
Yeah, but cast iron retains heat, they're like bricks.
Well, that's what they're saying. Like that's what the things in the Gemara used to be like. They said it was that hot and it would retain heat. They'll allow you to put stuff on top because it doesn't look like you're cooking, but to keep things warm. But you couldn't put it inside, even if the coals are out. That thing stays hot forever. I can imagine if they're making these stoves in the Gemara time out of what, clay.
Right.
Like that's gonna stay hot for a long time. Clay does not lose it. I used to make pots and stuff, like those pots stay, you can't touch them for 2 days after you bake them.
Wow.
They stay hot. 2 days? 2 days in the kiln. After you put them in the kiln, you gotta leave them alone for 2 days. They're too hot.
Wow.
That's actually to so they have a very slow cool down temperature. That's for a different. It's not because they stay hot. It's because that if it cools down at the wrong rate, the inside and the outside will cool at slightly different rates. You'll get a flaw in it, and it will either crack or explode.
Interesting. But it means that there is still heat there. That's the fact.
It's a controlled. It's got the heat there because it's kept warm. It's cooled down very slowly. And if you took it out, it wouldn't have the heat there for 2 days.
I see. So it's only inside the kiln, you're saying?
It's you bring it down in a very controlled manner.
Right.
It cools down too quickly. I went to my mother does this. She in Israel she makes a lot of things out of clay. And I went to a town where for the last 2,500 years they've been making clay things in Italy called
Interesting.
impruneta.
Interesting. Okay. V'aminag l'hakel legamri kisvara rishayna. The minhag is to be completely lenient, like the first opinion. We call makom b'makom she'ein sham tzarich kol kach tov l'hachmir. In a place where there is not so much need, it is good to be strict. So, if you need to, you can be lenient, no problem. But if you can be strict, it's better to keep the conditions of Chazarah even before Shabbos, like Tosfos. So therefore, it's good to be careful not to take the k'deir off of the kira or the tana where you cooked it and put it close to dark on top of the base hachoyev oven, the winter oven. So here's the thing. The winter oven, you're keeping hot for the purpose of heating the house, right? And that is a good place to keep your food hot. So you cook it on the cooktop. And now you want to put it on your winter oven, which you're keeping hot for the heat of the house. So the thing is, if you want to keep the opinion of Tosfos, you should not do that. That winter oven is not emptied of its coals, nor are you covering those coals because you're not really using it for cooking. So it's just a regular, oven with the full heat in it. The only way to do it according to Tosfos is if before you put it down there, you put something in between to create a covering over the flame, and therefore you would be allowed to put it back there on Shabbos itself with that in between, on top, yep. And follow that same condition within that amount of time before Shabbos, if possible, if you want to keep Tosfos' opinion. Now, I will tell you the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah, but I cannot say that I understand it. Not yet, at least. But maybe we'll come up with something, or maybe we'll understand it another time. But I do feel that it's worth mentioning. Two arguments between the Alter Rebbe and the Mishnah Berurah in respect to Tosfos' opinion. The Mishnah Berurah paskins, like the opinions that say that if the food is not fully cooked, then you don't have to keep these conditions of Chazarah, even according to Tosfos. Listen to the logic. If the food is not fully cooked, then you don't have to keep these conditions according to Tosfos. Tell me why.
If the food's not completely cooked, then there's no issue of Chazarah, is there?
Exactly. On Shabbos, you would never put it back because it's not fully cooked. There's a bishul issue. So you would never put it back. Since you wouldn't put it back on Shabbos, we're not going to apply the rules of Shabbos to protect you from doing it on Shabbos because you would never do this on Shabbos.
Not only that, but it would create a hazard where people would think that this is the way of Chazarah, and then they might come to think that this is acceptable Chazarah practice.
I hear the argument. I hear. Question?
This is for something on Shabbos, like that's raw?
No, this is all for before Shabbos. Just, again, still with Tosfos' opinion about keeping these conditions before Shabbos, right, in that amount of time that it would take to heat up the pot. So the Tur and some Rishonim and the Southern Mishnah Berurah Paskins says that it does not apply if the food is not fully cooked. Because if it's not fully, the whole thing is keep these conditions before Shabbos to make sure you keep them on Shabbos. But one second. But on Shabbos, you would never put back a food that is not fully cooked. So the whole thing doesn't apply. You understand? On Shabbos,
you're removing food that's not fully cooked, and then you're going to put it back not fully cooked. You're going to cook it.
Right, but this is before Shabbos.
Yeah, but you can't do it.
You can do that before Shabbos, the Mishnah Berurah says that even within within these few minutes before Shabbos you can do it, even though Tosfos says normally you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah, but that's only because if it's a food that you could return on Shabbos with the conditions, we want you to keep the conditions now. But if it's a food that you could never return on Shabbos anyway, because it's not fully cooked, so there's no point in making a decree before Shabbos because you may do it on Shabbos, because you would never do it on Shabbos. Sorry?
Such as what?
Any food that is not fully cooked. You have a cholent. You made the cholent on the stove, and now you want to put it on the plata. And let's say you hold it a plata, you have to keep the conditions of Chazarah, let's say, right? So according to Tosfos, within a few minutes, you have to keep those conditions, keep it in your hand, don't put it down, have in mind, whatever it is. The Mishnah Berurah holds that if there are items in that cholent that are not fully cooked, potatoes is still hard, the meat is not fully cooked, whatever it is. So then you don't have to keep any conditions. You could put it down in between or whatever, because you would never be allowed to put such a thing on a plata on Shabbos, because that would be cooking on Shabbos. You understand what I'm saying?
But if it's back, you can't benefit from it.
I'm talking about before Shabbos. Before Shabbos, you can do it, because on Shabbos you would never do it. That's the point.
Because you would have needed Friday night.
Because you're not allowed to put uncooked food on a plata on Shabbos. That's why.
But then, okay, so again, the time that it takes, you take something off, you put it back on. You can't do that. So why is it if the food is?
If the whole reason you can't do it is because you may come to do it on Shabbos without the conditions, and if it's not fully cooked, you would never do it on Shabbos because you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos.
Doesn't that negate the whole thing?
It negates it whenever it's not fully cooked. Yes. It only applies if the food is fully cooked.
Where are we in Mishnah Berurah?
I didn't quote it inside, but if I can find it for you, I will. Hold on.
I've just got this brand new version that has like all sorts of commentaries in it.
Dirshu? Or Oizu Hadar?
Olam.
Or Oilam? Another one.
It's the brand new one, and I've actually got two of them arriving tomorrow. There's a guy, Arik, in Gola, who's everyone seems to know him. That's where I get all my Sfarim. And the volume 6 or 7, volume 6 is coming out in a few weeks. So I'm getting that one as well.
Here it is. Ayin Gimel. Avo kolz matchlin is bashal kol tzorka noit lo machzir b'chol gavnid lo shach le migzir deyach segam b'shavas zeu mavashal b'shavas pritim bezdar b'ach if li yishar slachtim v'yem yesh machmir gam b'zeh mishum lo plug. He actually brings two opinions, but he seems to favor the first opinion. He brings that one b'stam, that as long as it's not fully cooked, you could put it back and forth, no problem, because you would never do it on Shabbos. And some are strict also with this because of leiplug, and this is the opinion of the Alter Rebbe and the Magen Avram, that it's only if it's chai legamri, if it's completely raw, you're allowed to put it on Shabbos, right before Shabbos, because that's not Chazarah. Whenever it's completely raw, that's not Chazarah. That's Nushiyah. But once it started to cook, even if it's not fully cooked, that's still called Chazarah. And according to that, you would have to keep the other conditions. So that's point number one, argument out there in the Mishnah Berurah. Point number two is, which conditions do you have to keep during these few minutes? The Alter Rebbe says all of them. All of the Chazorah conditions, not the Bishul conditions, the Chazorah conditions. The Mishnah Berurah says only one of those conditions that the fire has to be covered. That's the only one you have to keep, not the other two about keeping it in your hand and having it in mind. And as I'm saying this, I'm trying to make up a reason for this. And maybe it is because covering the flame is the only one of the conditions of Chazarah that everybody agrees to. If you remember, in the Gemara, the idea of having in mind, some held of it, some didn't. Keeping it in your hands, even in the Shulchan Aruch, the Machaber doesn't bring it down, right? No, the Machaber doesn't bring down having it in mind. He brings out only keeping it in your hands. But in the Gemara, some say having in mind is enough. You don't have to keep it in your hands. And certainly transferring from pot to pot, many don't hold of. So I'm thinking that's probably what the Mishnah Berurah's reasoning is. That since this whole thing is a chumrah, during these 10 minutes to keep it in the Chazarah, it's enough to keep the chumrah for the condition that everybody agrees on, that the that the flame has to be covered, but not for the others. That's what it would seem. All right, let's sneak in one more. One more, 23, my friends. Here goes. To put it next to a tanor close to Shabbos is okay. Even though we said before some people forbid it on Shabbos itself, but before Shabbos it's certainly okay. Certainly to put it next to a fireplace, which is hot. If you're putting it next to a fireplace, there's no Chazarah issues. There may be bishul issues, but there's no Chazarah issues. When it comes to Shabbos, you can put it next to a fireplace as long as there's no bishul issues. Before Shabbos, you could put it even if there are bishul issues, because it's before Shabbos. The only issues that Tosfos tack on to before Shabbos is Chazarah issues. And Chazarah issues don't apply opposite the fireplace, because that's not a normal place to cook. What about bishul issues? Well, bishul issues we don't tack on to before Shabbos, because we don't add any extra malachas that you can't do before Shabbos, unless you took on Shabbos early. Otherwise, we don't say you have to keep Shabbos before Shabbos starts. That's what I was saying before, that if it's totally raw, then you can put it even on a uncovered flame, close to the darkness, according to everybody, even according to Tosfos. When it's raw, then there's no reason to worry that you may stoke the flames, as we explained above. What? Chai?
No, even Marak, it's done in the gamble. He's allowed to put it next to the side if it's at level. According to the symbol.
Whose phone is this? Yoram forgot his phone. Oh, it's yours? Sorry. One more time. Two separate things here. We spoke about opposite of a fireplace, and that there's no problem with Chazorah because it's not a place to cook. And as far as bishul is concerned, on Shabbos you have to worry about bishul there. But before Shabbos, there's no extra rules of bishul. Even if it's totally cooled down, soup, you could put opposite the fireplace right before Shabbos. Chai legamri is another thing. You don't have to keep the goodness of Chazorah because that's like a new shehiyah. That's not like a Chazorah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If I wrap my challah in a rag.
In a rag.
And then I stick it, because you don't cook with a rag. And then I stick it in the oven. I'm
Putting a rag in the oven is not a wise idea.
No, this is the piggyback on what you were saying. To keep it warm for before Shabbos. Does that?
The oven is on?
No, off.
Off, okay.
Off. The oven's off, it's warm.
Okay.
But I don't want it to look like I'm cooking. So if I wrap it and then I put it in the oven, that's definitely not like cooking.
Well, I don't know where you're even coming from.
Because it's not a way that you would cook.
I don't understand. Why do you have to make it look like you're not cooking?
Because
You're talking about putting it in the oven on Shabbos? Is that what you're talking about?
No, the oven is off.
The oven's off.
And you want to put it on Shabbos or before
Correct, on
Shabbos?
Shabbos. Shabbos just came in.
Oh, you want to put a rag around it to make it look like a shinui.
Yeah, make it look like I'm not cooking.
Isn't that a problem with covering it?
Yeah, that's another problem. That's another problem with hatmana. Is that a hatmana issue?
Yeah, different food.
Is that an insulation issue? I don't know about that. That's one issue. But to answer your question in a more direct way, Yossi's pointing out that it may be hatmana. You're not allowed to insulate something in a way that adds heat. But that's a separate issue. I don't know if that applies though if the oven is off, so because it's going down. I don't know if that's considered adding heat. I'm not sure about that. But I don't know if that's enough to make it not look like cooking. You know what I'm saying? To put to wrap it in something. I don't know. I did see a similar svara. In Al Farkash where he said I did see a similar svara that if you put something down, it makes it an unusual way. But I don't want to agree or disagree because I don't remember exactly.
So what would you say if you were giving it them?
Oh, here it is. Oh, here's what he says. He wants to say that, let's say we're discussing that a countertop is like the floor, not like a chair. He suggests, well, what if I put a towel on top of the countertop? Well, actually, a towel is not so unusual because you don't want to burn the countertop. But what if I put, a notebook or something? So maybe that's like a chair because I'm putting it in a way that shows that it doesn't belong there. But back to your question, do we say that putting something around it makes it not look like regular cooking? I don't know. That's a chiddush. I don't know. Maybe. But there is also a hatmana issue. There may be a hatmana issue. I'll have to get to that another time. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, see you next week.
Next week. I want to point out that there is a lot on the handout, which I sent out for today, which I did not get to. So even though we pretty much finished Alter Rebbe about Chazarah, but there are going to be points in the handout that I want to address next week. So if you may want to print it out or just bring your computers or whatever with you, and then we'll discuss that, and then we'll continue in the Shulchan Aruch next week in Mr. Shem. Yes, after Meyer, please, if you don't mind.
Isn't it quick? Is it short?
I